something you mentioned, I understood myself better. That's what it's all about. And when I was going to the Buddhist Meditation Center, when I was, a lot younger, they explained to me that the whole idea of judgment, when you die, the day of judgment, is not like God sitting in front of you telling you like all these things. Like, it's basically what happens is they play a movie of all like how you made people feel, like that's basically it. And then if you make people feel like shit, you're going to feel like shit. That's the judgment. But if you make people feel good, if you empower them, if you grew them, then it's going to be rewarding. So Judgment Day is not like, it's like, okay, here's what you did. Let's do a review, a recap. Like when you finish playing Mario Kart and somebody wins, they go through like...
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dad Hat. Today's guest is Luis Fernando Mises, who is a shaman, free market advocate, and leadership consultant. Hey, Luis, how are you?
I am so happy to be with you today. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm happy to have you here. One of the things that we like to explore on this show is the intersection between fatherhood and modern society. But today, I'm really excited to bring up an old idea, and that is being a shaman. And that's something that you're very familiar with. And my first question is, what is a shaman?
That is probably the hardest question I've been asked. So I'm a student of shamanism, and that's something that it's been in my life since I was little. It's something that I've always been really curious about. So depending on, I guess who's telling history, the shaman is the person who usually looks at patterns and is able to connect with the world and with spirits and the intermediary between this world and the next, and is able to communicate with people and helps them get better, so physically or mentally, spiritually. So it's also one of the hardest jobs because you have to continuously keep yourself in check. It's a really slippery slope to where once you think you know what the hell is going on, you most likely will fall, lose grasp of things and maybe even reality. So I went on the field. What is it? A shaman is somebody who it's like a scientist of the old world, somebody that always tries to understand and tries to explain, if you will.
Okay, so if being a shaman is trying your best to understand and explain to others, what is something that you explain pretty often? What is something that you are correlating with what you say is the old world versus reality?
There is a quote from Ludwig von Mises, and he says, if they keep repeating the lies, I will keep repeating the truths. So in my estimation, it's something similar to that. Like, we have to remember, and we help people remember. And that's what it's all about. So how do we connect the old world with the new world? We help them remember. It's not that, we need like new ideas. We need new things. We need new concepts. But also we cannot just throw everything out that we've done in the past, things that our ancestors have done. We are here because of them, and we have to honor them in a sense, and we have to see some patterns, and the world works in patterns. It's mathematics. You cannot just ignore them, if you will. So the connection is about remembering who you are, most importantly, and from then you can see everything else. Because I think the main problem in the new world is that we don't know who we are, and historically that has been the quest, that has been the seeking, all stories, they talk about it, searching for the Holy Grail situation. That's what it's all about.
We've been talking for just a few minutes already, and we haven't mentioned a psychedelic experience yet. And, when someone who is uninitiated, if you will, hears shaman, that's the first thing that we think of is a psychedelic experience. And I've heard you say prior that that's the easy part of it. The rest of it is remembering what you've learned from that experience. So what can be learned from the psychedelic experience?
Oh my gosh, everything, like really everything. And so I will kind of give some context to what you said that I mentioned. Taking the plant medicine is challenging. I'm not saying, it's a walk in the park. And it depends what medicine you're working with, the time that it takes and all of that. I remember I was with a Peruvian shaman, Don Jose, and he was explaining the new people. He said, this medicine, ayahuasca, lasts between 4 and 5 hours, perhaps even the rest of your life. And, a few people cackled, but I was like, he's not fucking kidding. Like, this is some serious stuff, So, that part, it is challenging. But what I mean by that's the easy part is it will show you things that you may not want to see, that you're avoiding, that you're hiding from because they're too painful. And I truly believe that most people are good people and that they want to do good. And sometimes they get into dysfunctional roles because they're afraid of looking at that stuff. So they keep doubling down on their bullshit. So anyway, plant medicine shows you those things. And I'm sure, people know some of those individuals who every month, I got to go do ayahuasca because I'm having this problem. And it's the same problem every time. So you get to a point where, like, when you get the message, you hang up the phone, you start working on things. So you get the message, meaning you can see what you're avoiding, you can see where you're falling short, and hopefully you start working and making steps towards that. So that's really the hard thing, like changing habits, changing the way you speak, changing the way you treat people, changing the way you treat yourself. So it's a continuous effort. And I don't know why, a lot of people think that life should be easy, life should be happy, the goal is happiness. But historically, we've always known that that's not true. So whenever you seek happiness, even this country, was based on the idea of the pursuit of happiness, not happiness. Like, they had a really advantageous perspective, these guys. They knew what the hell they were talking about. So go seek it. They didn't mean like you're going to get it. So that is what it's all about. It's like the horizon. You will never reach it, but you have to keep working at it all the time. So anyway, the idea of working towards that is a forever endeavor situation. I also teach servant leadership in corporate. One of the contracts that I had was with one of the Forbes 100. And the CEO said, we've been doing this because my mentor started the consulting firm, I don't know how many years ago, like 40. So Jack, the CEO, said, we've been teaching servant leadership for 40 years, and we don't have one perfect servant leader. So what that means is not that I'm not doing a good job at it. What that means is that it's a perpetual job that we, have to keep. It's a Simon Sinek calls it the infinite game. There is a game that you win, and then that's it. But life is not about winning. It's about staying in the game.
Wow. So it's about the journey, and it's more about growth and more about obtaining potential and getting better every day rather than winning the game of life. That is amazing. And in my experience, very true as well. So you also mentioned earlier about basically explained getting to know yourself or know thyself, and a psychedelic experience and a spiritual journey that, you portray or you put on helps you know yourself. Is this something that can be done without the psychedelic experience?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I also do breath work, and this is a little bit of a interesting story. I got invited to speak at a conference in Acapulco. So I, go do my thing, and there's a bunch of people and it's nice, good reception anyway. So after me, 2 guys after was Sean Stone, the son of Oliver Stone. And he does, I want to watch it, so I pay attention, whatever. And at the end, he says, me and my girlfriend are going to do breath work outside. If you guys want to join us, come over. I'm like, who doesn't want to hang out with Sean Stone? So I go and, pay my fee, whatever. And we're laying on the, half grass, half sand, just right there on the beach. And she has us, Kaya has us do the breath work. And it was really challenging, the monkey mind. I'm thinking like, why am I here? I'm getting bit by ants. It's too hot. I'm sweaty, yada, yada, yada. But I know the deal. I know that I have to keep going through it. Like, I know that it's not about comfort. So it's just like when you're running, the first 10 minutes are the hardest. Or when you're lifting, the first 5 reps are the worst. But then you get past that. And then, so I know the drill. So I keep going. And at some point, something switches. And I connect with some whatever interdimensional brother and sister, whatever. I don't know. I cannot see it. I just feel the presence. And I just start crying. And as obviously, an immigrant from a different country, I'm in the United States, not my country, different culture, different language, different friends, all of that stuff. Sometimes it feels lonely, even though I've assimilated, I've been like all of that stuff. There is the level, and then the spiritual path also adds another layer to, sometimes it's not as easy to relate. And then, political ideologies and then yada, yada, yada. So sometimes it feels lonely. And I'm sure that this is not just me. A lot of people feel a level of loneliness, I've noticed, in this country especially. So anyway, when I connected with whomever that was, they said, hey, we're here with you. Just keep going. So they started connecting and telling me all sorts of things. I had revelations, and I will spare you all the details. But where I'm going with it is just through breathing, I was able to get in that world. And other people can do it. Also, I'm a certified yoga instructor, a meditation teacher. There are very many ways where we can get to that point. The whole idea of yoga is not calisthenics. It's not a sport. You can gain really good shape. I got in really good shape because of yoga. But that's not the way you go for it, So the idea is that you get all the kinks out of your body, so where you can actually move to a way where you can align your energy, and then you start getting, downloads, So, for instance, in India, there are some people who hold an asana for a day or a year or 10 years kind of thing. And they get their downloads. So, yeah, there's many, many, many ways.
Downloads. Are you saying kind of messages or learning experiences while you're in the struggle? Is that what you're saying?
It could be that. Thank you for asking about that, so I can explain better. The idea is just know thyself, right? So you get to connect with your mind, with your body. You know what you're made out of. You can see how you can expand, and then you're able to connect things in your mind, life patterns, things make sense. Kind of like when you're taking a shower and you have all sorts of cool ideas. It's something related to that. You get into alpha state, and then, so the way that I like to explain it is you get to a point where we can only see a small percentage of the electromagnetic field, right? Because of our eyes, they can only see so much. So when you take plant medicine, that opens up, you can see more. You can see more than with your eyes. You can, people that have synesthesia, for instance, I have a little bit of that. You can get to points like that, which is you can smell colors, or you can hear colors and things like that. You can taste patterns, if you will. It's so weird. So that is one thing. Other thing, the downloads could also be questions that you've been asking. But my mentor Bill Harris told me that a lot of times that can only that it's not necessary to do all those things. You can just do asking your unconscious mind. When you get to the subconscious, the id that Freud talks about. Most people don't know that they can trust it, so they don't. But like, when people say you have all the answers within, like, that's not hyperbole. There's a difference between when you're thinking and when you ask yourself questions. So when you ask yourself questions and let it steep like a bag of tea, things come up differently because you're connecting to a different modem, if you will, than if you're logically thinking.
Yes, that is a breakthrough for sure. I think that, you mentioned Freud there, and I do want to mention I have had 2 psychedelic experiences. They were not with a shaman. They weren't guided. They were just young, experiential type of situations. But when someone asked me about it, I always explain, well, the first time was tough because I was young and I was just so outside of myself that I succumbed to fear in such a way that I was just scared the whole time. And after that, it took a little bit of time for me to try again. But that second time, I always explain it to people kind of like what you're saying, as I was almost viewing myself in third person. I was looking at my behavior. I was looking at my reactions to people, the ones that were good, the ones that were bad. I just understood myself in a way that probably would have not been possible without that at that time, just because I didn't know. But Carl Jung talks about the shadow, which is all of those things that you don't want to know about yourself and you don't want to fix about yourself because maybe it's embarrassing or maybe it hurts your ego or maybe it does whatever. But understanding your shadow is half the battle. And then just like you said, remembering that experience afterwards and changing your habits with using what you experienced. So I think it's a powerful thing to experience. And I don't know if I recommend it to anybody just because I'm no expert in the field, but I know it helped me quite a bit, which kind of leads me into the next thing. Psychedelics are becoming more and more mainstream. What do you think the future of psychedelic medicine is and what you call plant medicine?
Okay, I take notes because that's part of, what I'm used to at work, so I can reply to things. You mentioned fear real quick. That's like a primordial thing for everybody. Like, to this day, I still get scared when I go do plant medicine. So it's not something that just like, I've done it whatever number of times. Like, let me put a parenthesis. I don't like to say how many times I've done things. Like, I just find it like really without class, when somebody just tells me, I have 152 ayahuasca sessions under my belt. Like, okay, what have you learned, bro? Anyway, so fear. So that's why it's like so important to have a sitter, somebody that knows, has gone through it, that can be there with you, that can support you, because it can get pretty scary. And so like the whole idea of bad trips, like I firmly believe that a bad trip is just, I've had rough things, but a bad trip most times can be alleviated by preparing yourself mentally or even following a certain diet, like with the Peruvian shamans that I've worked with, they really, really, really stress the fact that you have to follow a certain diet 2 weeks before, and then even 3, 4, 5 days later. And I've noticed that Americans struggle so much with that. It's like really, like utilitarian. Like, I want to get this done. I don't want to stop eating meat. I don't want to stop smoking pot. Like, it's part of like they're giving it to you for a reason. So anyway, your experience is better. You have less fear. You have you feel more supported. It's a lot better. Something you mentioned, I understood myself better. That's what it's all about. And some when I was going to the Buddhist Meditation Center when I was a lot younger, they explained to me that the whole idea of judgment, when you die, the day of judgment, is not like God sitting in front of you telling you like all these things. Like, it's basically what happens is they play a movie of all like how you made people feel. Like that's basically it. And then if you make people feel like shit, you're gonna feel like shit. That's the judgment. But if you make people feel good, if you empower them, if you grew them, then it's going to be rewarding. So Judgment Day is not like, it's like, okay, here's what you did. Let's do a review, a recap. Like when you finish playing Mario Kart and somebody wins, they go through like, the highlights, if you will. That's basically the same thing. And if you're a shit person, you're going to have a tough time. And then your question, mainstream psychedelics. I'll tell you, I took my daughter to Mexico to get braces. So we get to Acapulco, we're in our apartment, and like it's a long day. I sit down and we're sitting next to each other on the couch, and she's on her phone on Insta or whatever. I'm on mine, and then I see a commercial of CNBC crypto. And I'm like, okay, wait, what? Like now it's just normal? That's kind of awesome, right? But, this was 2 years ago. Anyway, so I keep scrolling and I see another one where they do ketamine treatments via mail to you. And then I'm like, what? I mean, I literally like just started crying because, things that were considered fringe and cringe and, the word like I got into crypto in 2012. And like people mocked us with internet money for nerds, this and that and the other. And now CNBC crypto has that thing. And then the whole idea of psychedelics as healing medicine for mental problems is a thing that you can even buy online, order, and they'll send it to you. Like, we fought for all of these things and now they're here. So that's pretty fantastic. Like, I got really emotional. So when you say, what is that going to be like? I'm really excited. And my only fear is that Big Pharma is going to try to get its paws on that because, I still kratom too, as you probably know. And they tried, like the FDA tried to turn kratom into Schedule 1, which is kind of like heroin, like things that don't have like benefits in health at all. Like it's just harmful. I've gotten people of heroin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, alcohol, drugs, cocaine, things like that with kratom. And it's like relatively cheap. I can sell like a kilo for like $150 and that shit lasts you forever. And then when you buy hydrocodone for hundreds of dollars a bottle, right? So where I'm going with it is I'm excited about the proposition that it can be super healing, but we also have to keep in mind that we cannot let gatekeepers to get really, get in the way of just for I'm a huge capitalist. I want people to be, to make money and all that. Where I'm going with this, I don't want it to be dirty to the point where like they're the only gatekeepers. You can only get it from this thing, and you will only, like kind of like what happened with marijuana. Like when they got legalized, it got so expensive, and people still went and bought from black markets, right?
I'm not an expert in regulation by any means, but I would imagine, there is some type of regulation necessary for kratom. Is that true? Yeah. So, is there some sort of regulation necessary for kratom? Do you believe the government should be involved at all?
No, not at all. It's something that, I buy cinnamon and I use it for belly problems. And I can just go to Whole Foods and get as much as I want to or can afford or need at the time. And it's just the same thing. Coffee. Okay, let's put that parallel. Kratom is in the same family as coffee. They're cousins. It's a shrubbery. So we don't have, something that prevents us to get, you can take too much coffee and get anxiety, get palpitations. Same thing with kratom, So I don't think, and that's another thing of repeating the truths. Like we need to really understand that we are all adults and we need to deal with each other as adults and act like adults, like I don't want mommy government, daddy government. And this is depending on your favor the right or the left, that they have mommy issues or daddy issues. I'm an adult, right? So I don't want any intermediary. Of course, that doesn't mean that I don't want the Wild West. Well, actually, the Wild West wasn't as bad as they claim. But what I mean, I don't want something that is going to be dirty. We have third-party labs that actually cost me a lot of money whenever I get a shipment from Indonesia. It's like a couple $1,000s to check that everything, is clean, doesn't have E. coli, yada, yada, yada. So that's why it's the best damn kratom, right? So I, as a person that has integrity, want to be able to sell you something that I myself eat every day, right? So if I want it for me, that I'm going to be, beneficial for me, and I want to last a long time for my kids, I want the same for you, kind of thing,
Yeah, I gotcha. So we've been talking about being a shaman and psychedelic experiences. And sort of the value that you've told me about is a higher level of consciousness. And I've also heard you say the term Christ consciousness. Can you tell me what that means?
I'm trying to see how I can edit my thoughts on this one. So Christ consciousness is It is just like actual real following the Christ, and in the writings, nobody goes to the Father but through me. And the idea is to try to emulate, to try to do, and the whole wristband thing. What would Jesus do situation? So the Christ consciousness is an energy, okay, it's a frequency. When you go to your car and you put XM radio and you put like chill, because you like that music. So you are in there and you're jamming to that music and you feel it, right? So the Christ consciousness is similar to that. You dial into that, and you're vibrating at some of the highest vibrations that you can, and that's basically it. Like you're trying to channel the logos and things that you do, and that is also really hard to do because it faces you with where you fall short all the time. So it keeps you on your toes. So I mean, shit. Okay, since you're talking about this, I had ceremony ayahuasca, and every time it would kick my ass. It would be a rough ceremony. So at some point I was like really afraid and tired. I was like, Mother Ayahuasca, please give me a break. You always kick my ass. Give me something, please. Come on. So what happened was really outstanding. So I'm laying there, and then I start, the matrix code, how it looks. So I started seeing and feeling that, but gold matrix code of sorts, and just coming down. And I immediately knew that was, the Christ. And I absolutely was able to understand the idea of worshiping, why people go worship. At first, I'm like, that sounds kind of weird. But whenever I connected with this energy, I just felt so infinitesimally small. I was like, I am not worthy of your presence. Why are you here? I am sorry. Like, I felt like I am a piece of shit and you're still here with me. Thank you so much. But why, kind of thing? And I just wanted to praise. And it was the weirdest experience. So I had a little bit of an interaction. And I said, what the hell is up with, for instance, the televangelists? And he says, I give the gift to whomever asks for it, but sometimes they hang themselves with it by doing wicked things. So you have all this power, and depending on how you use it is what's going to come to you. Like, if you just use it for self-gain, you're going to get fucked. Like, you can see all sorts of, things that happen to people who misuse power. So the idea of it, which is kind of like servant leadership, actually the subtitle of servant leadership, the orange pamphlet, is it's about the legitimate use of power. So you use power for others, not over others. And that's what it's all about. It's kind of like the mentality is you're a steward, first among equals thing. Like, you are all the same, and you were given this because they trust you. You're the fiduciary of a trust fund. You're not the boss. You're at that one time, you're the steward, and you are responsible for all of this. So that's kind of how it works. I'm getting chills. So it's not like, you're anointed and everybody has to kiss your ass and things like that. It's like, no, you're actually the hardest working person because you were given that role,
So not to change the subject, but there's a couple of books out there that relate psychedelics and Christianity. I think one of them is The Immortality Key, and there's another one, The Mushroom and the Cross, I believe. Are you familiar with either of those two books by chance?
No, but I'm writing them down. Immortality Key and what?
The Mushroom and the Cross. So they're a little bit, and I've only read the summaries of each one because I'm deciding which one I'm going to read first. But from what I can tell, I don't want to say they're conspiracy theory or anything like that, but they're basically relating old text, Dead Sea Scrolls, some stuff from the Torah, and a lot of different things to basically saying a lot of that text is metaphorical, and what they're really talking about is mushrooms and how those experiences made people godlike or understand God. And like I said, I haven't. I was actually looking for a recommendation there, but that's okay. We'll take a look at those books at a later date and figure out what's going on there.
Well, I'm just mentioning that I do. I mean, even Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time, that, this is something that has a lot to do with psychedelic experience. Now, some people talk about, they exchange mushroom with Jesus. And when they're talking about Jesus, they actually mean the mushroom. Like, I think that's the mushroom on the cross. I just opened up the Wikipedia on it. And I was a little bit reading through it. So I don't think that's accurate. But I do think that there's okay. So I just purchased an annual subscription of the Daily Wire Plus, so I can watch all the Jordan Peterson documentaries on like the Exodus and, rewatch Genesis and anyway, all that. So continuously they're talking about that whole idea that it is related to psychedelics. So it is something that's not like a secret. And he even mentioned something like there's more mentions of psychedelics than people can be comfortable with. So, to your point, like this stuff is something that like, I'm really curious, why they hide it so much, What do you think?
I mean, I would imagine it's the same reason why they make it a Schedule I drug. Is it's more than likely very helpful with consciousness. And I would, with my only one or two experiences, would say it very much is. And I don't know if it is, big government or government trying to control thought or, keep the thought leaders of, someone who opposes big government, out of the conversation or discredit them or whatever the case is. But those are the only answers that I can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, I know David Icke. We've hung out, we've gone to dinner. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do think that he's right on a lot of things. It's not that I don't think that what he says is true. I just don't know. It seems kind of like, maybe he's seen more than I have, but his idea is that this is the archons are the invisible people that are like, they're non-corporeal, like spirits, basically puppeteering some people in government. I mean, I can see how that can be possible because, I've done poltergeist cleanses, I've done exorcisms, I've actually had some weird encounters with some gray aliens attacking me, and I can tell you some stories like super, super, super weird and crazy. So when he tells me those things, it's not that I think he's nuts, It's just that, I may have, other ideas.
Another something that comes up consistently on our show is being intentional as a father. And something with meditation, psychedelics, and breath work, a common thread there is being present. And I wanted to ask you, are those two ideas related? And if so, can you explain?
Yes, they are related. This is a tough one, and not a tough one for me to explain, but in the sense of especially the way that the male brain works, we are solution oriented, right? I mean, I've coached leaders that sometimes, like I'm in my late 30s, and I've been doing this for 13 years. So, I started pretty young. People in their 50s and 60s, and they tell me that their wife thinks that they don't love them anymore. And the guy's like, well, what do you mean? I work 12-hour days. You have your new BMW. You have a big house, this and that. So he, like in the male brain, we provide, and that's how we show love. And then the female brain is not about things. It's a nice extra, but it's not about things. So it's just like, different ways that we operate. So where I'm going with this is, in the male brain especially, we think that we need to be doing all of these achievements to be able to give to our kids. Like, well, you have a roof over your head. I'm fucking sending you to the best college I can afford, all of those things. So is that really what's necessary? I mean, if you can afford it, yeah, I think it's helpful. But most importantly, I think what's going to take the cake is the idea of being present. So as we were talking about before we started recording, meditation is nothing more than focus training. So what you're able to do is, most times we're everywhere. So you're able to harness that focus on anything. And that's what Bill Harris, my mentor, mentioned. He said, the most important thing you can do is focus. Pay attention. That's what Jordan Peterson says. The best thing, the whole idea of the Babylonians with Marduk, pay attention and speak clearly. Those are the two most powerful things you can do. So when you're channeling Marduk, in a sense, you're able to, like, your kids feel like you're with them, because, yeah, you can be sitting there, but you're not even there, physically your body maybe, but, you're answering this. And I'm always working too, so I'm somewhat guilty of this. But I've created systems in my life to where every Friday night I take my kids out. We're going to go have dinner and maybe play go-karts or just go out, walk in the park, go play golf, whatever it is. Friday night is for my kids. That doesn't mean that I'm not there with them all the time, So when they come around, I put my phone away, because even if it's somewhere there, they see that the phone is there, right? So I put it in my pocket. The phone doesn't exist. And I don't just do this with my kids. I try to do this with everyone, So the idea is, and I will tell you something that's really, that really helped me. I saw my dad die in front of me when I was 16. I'm 39. So this is a while ago, Now, your hero falls down having a heart attack. And 5 minutes before you had a dad, now you don't. I was 16. I put him in his truck. I drove him to the hospital. We didn't make it. So I'm really cognizant of how fragile life is and how everything changes just like this. So that really made me aware of the importance of relationships. I am glad that not everybody has to go through that. Most people, like, the natural thing is their parents die when they're old. I still have my mom and I'm grateful. But that moment was something that really opened up my eyes for a lot of things. So I try to be really present with people and, like, really listen and pay attention and understand. And I ask questions. And this is something that people really like. Like, they feel heard. They're like, when you're asking follow-up questions or just clarifying questions. So with the kids, this is something that I've noticed, and I don't want to throw shit to anybody, but some people feel like they can't get into kid mode and be with their kids. So they don't want to hear about Mr. Beast or PewDiePie or all of these things that the kids are listening. But for the child, that's what's important at that time. So by the time they turn into teenagers, they already know that you don't give a fuck about what they have to say, so they're not going to share it because you didn't want to know anything about Dragon Ball or, the aforementioned things. So the idea is you become aware of what's really important and that you only have, if you think about it, if your kids go to college at 19 or 18, that means you only have 18 summers with them. When you think about it that way, it doesn't seem too long, does it? So it's like, okay, now I only have 18 summers with you. Fuck, I'm going to be present. We're going to at least go to the lake. Because I'm not going to lie, sometimes funds are tight, but the idea, I don't have any money. We're just going to say, no. The lake is just $5. Just parking, whatever it costs. Let's go. Let's play. Let's get in the water. Let's go volleyball or whatever. Be with them, whatever they like. And I'll tell you something that I do in my car. I play DJ, so I always like to have my kids invite their cousins or their friends. So I have a car that has 8 seats, so we always have a bunch of kids, and I give whomever's not driving, next to me, my iPhone, and every kid gets to pick a song. So we go, around each. So it's not just about me, they feel like they can play their music. They feel like they can be themselves. In that pace. I will share something that's kind of a sweet and sour. My daughter turned 18 at the beginning of the year, and she's thinking about moving out, and I am crying, right? And she says, we're having this dialogue conversation and figuring shit out, and at the end I said, you know what? After all, I'm not worried because I know who you are. And she says, you know what? I'm not worried because I am who you made me. And I'm like, wow. So those are the things, you want your kids to never leave, hopefully, but if they never leave, you failed as a parent. What do you think?
You spoke about some extreme value there of just actually being present, being aware of what's going on, being with your child during even menial, just small things, the Friday nights of just hanging out and how much that means to them. And I can definitely relate to that because, once I started being intentionally intentional as a father, I saw results almost immediately. I have a 2.5-year-old son, and I'm wanting him to learn and grow at a good pace, just like any father would. And so I start trying to, figure out, what are the growth tricks? What are the hack tricks, that I can really position him to the best I possibly can. And what I really found out is kind of what we're talking about, just being present, being intentional about being a father at that time is going to do a lot of it because it gives the kid a great feeling, but also they're wanting to learn from you anyways. Something I've figured out is they're learning from what I'm doing and what I'm saying, in general, not what I'm saying and telling them to do directly. And being intentional or being present came together, and it was just a thing that just started happening. I taught him all the chess pieces on the chessboard. We learned all the colors, just thing after thing in learning started to become easy. That's what happened first. But then also he was delighted to be in my presence, and I'm delighted to be in his presence. And it was just an amazing thing. So, being present and being intentional as a parent is crucial. And it was an amazing thing to experience. Just for him to say, hey, Rook, this is the Rook. And I'm like, yes, it is, my man. Yes, it is. So, I mean, it was an amazing experience for sure. So, yeah, definitely. So, you've mentioned servant leadership a couple of times, and I think I got the gist of what you're talking about. But what I'd like to know is, what are the main principles of being a servant leader?
Okay, so Robert Greenleaf wrote about this in 1970 or so. And all of this came about because, back in the late 60s, there were a lot of problems with, colleges and the government and, massacres, Kent State and things like that. So he was somebody that was trusted, and he got invited to talk about what he saw. So what he started doing is he started hanging out with students and asking them what they read. And one of the books that they told him was Journey to the East by Hermann Hesse. And in that book, he got inspired by the protagonist named Leo. So the whole idea behind it was there was a group of people that wanted to go into pilgrimage and get to this spiritual mecca of sorts. And there's a servant that, would keep singing or whistling, keep their mood high, would put their boots by the fire at night so they would dry up, would clean the tents, very non-glamorous things. And at some point, Leo disappears, and then like half of the crew went back, and some people kept going. And anyway, so the one guy that made it to this spiritual mecca saw that Leo was the main person, like the in that order, in the spiritual order. He was the high priest of sorts. So that's where Robert Greene got the idea of servant leadership. Like, even if you are, the leader, like you have to start by being a servant. So when you ask me, what is that about? Like, it's about wanting to be the leader, not because you want to be the leader, but because you're needed. We don't want leaders that want to be leaders. We want leaders that are good at whatever they do and are able to keep the work clean, and by that I mean like ethically, morally. So, the main thing is listening, like really listening. We have 2 ears and one mouth, and we have to use it in that ratio. Being present, growing others, having empathy, growing people. So I will tell you something that, a quick example of that, like my parents were servant leaders from the get-go. My dad had his business, and he felt like his employees were his children, and I would get jealous, a little kid, like, I am your kid. What the hell? What do you mean they're your children? It's like, no, like, I care about them. He would, like, my parents, every 3 years or so, they will buy like a new sofa set, whatever, and they will give the older one to one of these guys, like, television, things like that. Always, making sure that they took care of everybody. And there was a time where business sucked, and my dad didn't pay himself for like 6-8 months, but made sure that he could make payroll, So when you're making money, it's fantastic. But when you're not making money, like, you don't treat people instrumentally and just kick them out. You wouldn't fire your son from the family when things are tough, So that's kind of how he viewed it. All right, son, we're going to send you to the homeless shelter, so we're going to take care of each other, kind of thing. So that was weird to me when I was little. And, maybe some people watching this, they're like, what the hell, but once you get like deeper into it, you see, how important this is. So that's the idea, that you're able to care. I got Howard Behar is the former president of Starbucks. He became my mentor. I have a couple of interviews with him. And one of the things that he talks about is same thing. His dad had a business and said, Harold, can you pick up some berries and give them to this person? And said, Dad, you forgot to charge them. And said, you know what, son? not everything we do we get paid for. We have to take care of our community too, and that's something that he was little and he still remembers. He's in his 60s. So sometimes like you are not a business with a mission. You're a mission with a business. That's like, you're turning upside down the pyramid of power kind of thing.
Wow. That's an amazing story. And in all my business experience, I would say that the leader that would get down and dirty with his employees, pick up trash in the parking lot, do the things that nobody really wanted to do. Those are always the best leaders. And I think that's a common opinion for sure, but to actually dial in being a servant leader seems to be, a great thing to do. So thank you for that. Luis, you've brought up some great ideas and you've taught me a lot already. And I want to tell you, I thank you for that so much.
Thank you. I'm really happy to have been here.
Yeah, no, for sure. So happy to have you. For all the people that want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Facebook, Instagram, Luis Fernando Mises. Now mindful, because I've been in the crypto space for a decade, there's people impersonating me, so make sure that it is me. And because of my ADD, I usually don't type. I send voice messages or videos. So, just be mindful that if they're asking you for crypto investments, it's not me. So Instagram, I mostly post pictures of cats, but I'm there too if you want to connect. Facebook, I'm there. I have a couple of websites, emancipatedhuman.com. It's under construction right now. That's the consulting firm. I have Best Damn Kratom, which is obviously the Kratom store. And I have luisfernandomises.com, which is an older website when I was doing a lot of activism. I just keep it as an archive of sorts from all the older things that we've done.
Luis, thank you so much for being on the Dad Tat.
Happy to be here.